Hey everyone, it's your boy Jay. Welcome to another episode of Journeys with Jay. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoyed the journey with me today. If you're not, thanks so much for tagging along with me once again. In today's episode, we look at the medicine in the community section of the Medicine Gallery at the London Science Museum. We begin this journey by looking at the role of medicine in fighting some infectious diseases, then explore how the development of anaesthetics changed healthcare, and briefly examine medical care on the front line of the First World War. The Medicine Galleries covers over 3,000 square meters, taking over 2/3 of an entire floor at the Science Museum, and displays more than 3,000 medical objects. It's a journey through history, technology, and human ingenuity. Medicine and infectious diseases. We can all catch infectious diseases brought on by bacteria, viruses, or other microorganisms. Some, such as the common cold, rarely cause any serious problems, but others can kill millions of people. The COVID-19 pandemic was a stark reminder of this. Controlling the spread of infection has been a major focus of governments and organizations across the world. Preventing disease is complicated, but improvements have been made through vaccination, education, increased standards of living, and global cooperation. This section of the museum and video looks at some of the prevention and treatment efforts for polio, malaria, and tuberculosis. This is a skeleton of a woman who lived with leprosy for several decades. The effects of the disease can clearly be seen in marks and damage to her skull, shoulder blades, and the bones in her feet. She lived in Denmark more than 600 years ago and was buried in a cemetery reserved for those with leprosy. Working in a similar way to a modern exercise bike, this chair was used by a woman who contracted polio as a child. It is one of a range of machines developed by Dr. Gustaf Zander, an influential Swedish orthopedic doctor who advocated the benefits of exercise. People with polio could require years of rehabilitation, and many were left with lifelong disabilities. Braces help children whose legs had been weakened by polio to walk. About 1 in every 200 cases of polio causes irreversible paralysis, very often affecting the legs. Dolls were used to help to explain to both children with polio and their parents the treatment they would receive. A cabinet respirator, better known as an iron lung, kept a person breathing when their lungs were paralyzed by the disease polio. It was sealed around the body so a pump could regulate air pressure inside, forcing the person's chest to rise and fall. There is no cure for polio. At best, people had to hope its impact would pass while they waited immobilized. As the contagious nature of TB became better understood, so did the importance of isolating and then treating those with the disease. The Sanitorium medical facilities for the long-term ill were often in remote sites. Patients sought recovery through surgical treatments and sometimes years of strict regimens of rest and occupational therapy, fresh air, and sunlight. This model was made by a patient living near Cambridge. The open and airy design was seen as the most effective way to treat the disease. They became self-sufficient, close-knit communities housing large numbers of patients and staff. The disease was once common in Britain and widespread enough that special hospitals were established. Despite education, improved living conditions, early diagnosis, antibiotics, and access to free medical care, it has yet to be eliminated in Britain. Tuberculosis, or TB, has long been a common cause of death across the world. This contagious bacterial infection attacks various parts of the body, particularly the lungs and bones, and it can develop over many years. A huge obstacle in the ongoing fight against TB is economic inequality. This can result in limited access to treatment, and as a result, the disease spreads within poor communities in particular. Recent deaths from TB are mostly in developing countries. The disease was once common in Britain and widespread enough that special hospitals were established. Despite education, improved living conditions, early diagnosis, antibiotics, and access to free medical care, it has yet to be eliminated in Britain. Machines such as this one were used around Britain to x-ray people for signs of TB. At its peak, it may have imaged more than 100 people a day. Those found to be infected were paid by the government to take time off work and seek treatment, protecting their family, friends, and workmates from the disease. Posters encouraging people to have their chests x-rayed for TB as a matter of social duty were common in Britain. Mobile clinics traveled to numerous towns, villages, and workplaces offering free x-ray screening services. This is a hypodermic syringe set used to give injections of quinine chloride and anti-malaria treatment. The kit was used by those traveling to areas like Africa where malaria was common. The painted label written in Latin indicates that this glass pharmacy jar contained powdered quinine. Quinine is used to reduce temperatures and as a pain reliever, but was primarily a means to treat and prevent malaria. This is a bundle of strips of rolled cinchona bark. Quinine is a component of cinchona bark which was used to treat and prevent malaria. Besides being used to treat malaria, cinchona bark is also a pain and fever reliever. Quinine is extracted by a complex chemical process. This is a handheld metal anti-mosquito spray gun. From the late 1890s, mosquitoes were known to carry the disease malaria. It is possible that this copper and brass spray gun was used during the First World War to protect soldiers from mosquitoes. Spraying chemicals to kill mosquitoes has been used to control malaria since the early 1900s, but since the 1960s, there has been growing concerns about the impact of these chemicals on both the environment and human health. The increasing resistance shown by some mosquitoes to the insecticides has also prompted an urgent search for new types of spray and alternative methods of control, including an effective vaccine. Once people realized mosquitoes carried malaria, they took what measures they could to protect themselves. This fine netted hood, called the Simpsonette, designed during the First World War by Mary Simpson, was shaped to be worn over hats or even helmets. It was marketed to those planning to visit high-risk areas. Mosquitoes usually feed on people during the night, so this net is designed to hang over a bed. Fine mesh nets have long been used as a barrier against mosquitoes, but this example has also been coated with an insecticide. The combination of two established technologies has become a simple and widely used way to protect against malaria. Hospitals of the past were very different to hospitals now. While some offered medical treatments, many were hostels. They could house the sick, but also assisted with the elderly, the homeless, and those unable to work. As a religious duty, these were intended to be free, but economic pressures forced authorities to impose charges. Hospitals were often funded by leading public figures, the wealthy, and religious organizations. Reminders of these origins can still be found. Requiring great strength, early tooth pullers twisted, levered, and pulled teeth using dental keys and pliers with very little pain relief. The patients were physically restrained during the agonizing process. Other surgical operations, such as breast cancer treatment, limb amputations, and removing bladder stones, were attempted with herbs, alcohol, or opium as relief. Speed was the surgeon's only other tool to limit the patient's pain. Before we had modern anesthesia, surgery was horrifically painful. The search for pain relief goes back a long way, and it's a tale of mind-altering states, poisonous plants, and recreational drugs. Alcohol was commonly used to make patients insensible or intoxicated before treatment, but it was also used as a solvent in sedative potions. Another common ingredient in sedative potions was opium, extracted from the opium poppy. First anesthetics, ether or chloroform, were inhaled, either from sponges or dipped onto a handkerchief and held over the mouth. But ensuring the correct dose was difficult. Too much was fatal, too little, and the patient felt pain. The rise of a new medical specialist, the anesthesiast, generated ways of monitoring patients during surgery, recording the outcomes, and experimenting with dosage. Ether was the first anesthetic, a colorless liquid with strong vapors a patient could inhale. It took time to work, time to recover from, and made patients nauseous, as well as irritating their lungs. Chloroform was discovered almost a decade later, in 1853. It was easier to use, but carried the risk of a heart attack. Both were gradually replaced from the 1930s by safer chemical agents, such as nitrous oxide. Chloroform and Childbirth, 1845 to 1926. Pioneer anaesthetist John Snow successfully gave Queen Victoria chloroform for 2 of her childbirths in 1853 and 1857. Her experience assured many women that anesthetics were safe for use. She wrote a letter of the, quote, inestimable blessings of chloroform, which no one can ever be sufficiently grateful for, end quote. In the 1880s, before it was made illegal, cocaine was a popular choice for pain relief. It was administered by injection to numb specific parts of the body and allowed surgeons to operate on patients while they were awake. Novocaine is a chemical relative of cocaine. Developed in 1905, it is not addictive like cocaine and is still used in dentistry. Henry Boyle turned anesthetics from handheld equipment into more precise machinery. This design from 1917 made a patient unconscious in minutes, supplying a careful mix of anesthetic gases and oxygen. Meters helped monitor breathing and blood pressure, and any airflow problems triggered an alarm. Modern computerized machines retain Boyle's structure but have more safety monitors. Anesthetics like Quinine are an important part of a surgical team. They help to identify whether a patient is fit for surgery, create a unique and delicate balance of anesthesia for them, and monitors their condition throughout a procedure. Controlling blood loss. A challenge for surgery is not only to treat the person, but to control the flow of their blood while doing it. Blood is one of the most important components of our bodies. Losing too much of it is potentially life-threatening. Techniques for restricting blood loss during surgery have come and gone, from applying pressure, heat, and stitches, to replacing lost blood by transfusion. The heart-lung machine performs the functions of the heart and lungs during surgery. A pump takes over the action of the heart, so the heart can be stopped, making it easier to operate on. The patient's blood flows over the rotating disc, where oxygen is blown across it, taking over the actions of the lungs. This machine was conceived in the early 1950s and was the first to be used in open heart surgery. Here we consider medicine in the battlefield. This is a field medic kit. Performing surgery near the front line in the First World War in 1914 to 1918 was an enormous challenge for medical teams. Battlefields were often across farmlands which harbored dangerous infection-causing bacteria. New weapons created devastating injuries, where soldiers either died from catastrophic blood loss or faced a rushed operation in desperate conditions. In makeshift operating theaters, good hygiene and light levels were difficult to maintain, with the risk of attack constant. Pain was controlled by morphine and anesthetics, if available. Foldable metal operating table made for the German military, but likely to have been requisitioned by Allied forces and reused in a British medical facility during the First World War. Sturdy but flexible, this metal operating table consists of 3 sections, the top and bottom parts of which can be adjusted into a number of different positions to support a patient, but can also be folded up for easy transport. The lattice-like structure reduces the weight of the metal structure without a significant loss of strength. The operating table was easily moved when battle lines changed. Thousands of life-saving operations were carried out on this table during the First World War by specialist surgeons and their teams. Infection was a constant threat to the wounded in the manure-rich farmlands of battle. The operations included removing infected tissues and, if caught too late, amputating limbs. This is a bronze waxwork and glass sculpture by Eleanor Crook entitled Santa Medicina. The bronze female figure holds a scalpel and scissors, both the tools of surgery and classical symbols for controlling the thread of life. Her hair is looped onto her head, crowned with a surgeon's mirror. The stethoscope becomes a string of prayer beads. The skirt shelters a fragile waxwork figure in a glass case, under a blanket covered with symbolic pins and surrounded by flickering candles. The figure is part surgeon, part saint, combining objects and imagery from different faiths and medical practices. The amulets that cover Santa Medicina's skirt are drawn from objects in the galleries, international medical collections, and the life of the sculptor. Members of staff at the museum also suggested symbols relevant to them. Santa Medicina's skirt reveals a vulnerable, sheltered figure, both body and soul, nourished equally by medicine and faith. Crook helps us to reflect on the frailty of human life, an imagined patron saint of medicine, and hopes to offer a guide for thinking about what makes a good death. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Journeys with Jay. I hope you enjoyed exploring a little bit more about the medicine galleries at the London Science Museum with me today. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section. Until next time, keep safe, God bless. It's your boy Saint Jay, out of here.